for Jura. Oh, yeah, that's really great news. Really great news. Oh, Ian got it. Just, there we go. Yeah, no, very, very good. Very, very good. G'day.
Hello.
Hello. Audio level, testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. David Crisfolli, Jarrod, Bleijie. Sad confirmation today that Queensland is the official car theft capital of the country. That is a title that not one single Queenslander wants to see, and it is the reality of what everyday Queenslanders in every part of this state are living through. The youth crime crisis is undermining people's feeling of safety. It's burning a hole in their wallet, and these figures show it. 5,377 cars stolen in Queensland in the first quarter, an unwanted record, and it's compromising people's feeling of safety and security, and it's costing them. The insurance premiums you pay are a direct result of the law and order policy settings of the state government. And every time somebody's car gets stolen, there is a direct impact on how safe they feel and how affordable their lives are. And as I have listened to Queenslanders, they have told me stories about the impact of when their cars have been stolen. It costs them in their rising premiums, it costs them in getting Ubers or taxis to and from work. There is just a complete disconnection of what they do and how they get to work and earn a living. And this is a tale of thousands of Queenslanders who are falling through the cracks because of a generation of repeat young criminals who have benefited from laws being watered down. And when you look at statistics that show nearly 4 in 10 youth offenders are in Queensland, you know that something is wrong. When you look at figures that show you that Queensland is now the car theft capital, how on earth did we get here? A proud state. How did we get to this point? And this morning, scenes from Townsville that are becoming normalised, while they're not normal for Queenslanders. Cops being the target of young criminals in stolen cars, being taunted and rammed. There was a time when young crims would flee from the law. They're now running at it. They're now running towards police. It just defies belief that police officers doing their job, parked, could be the subject of young criminals in a stolen car not running away from them, but running at them. That's what a joke the state government's laws have become in the eyes of young offenders. And it's got to change. And it starts with consequences for action. It starts with removing this crazy provision of detention being a last resort. And it starts with turning kids around with a proper early intervention strategy. In a moment, the Deputy Leader will go through some of the sad failings we have seen in law and order and policing in this state just in this week alone. But before I hand over, I just wanted to make good on a promise I made to mums in Gladstone yesterday to continue to raise the issue of the maternity failure, which is now at 301 days in that proud community. And I made them a commitment I'd do it here, and we will do it on the floor of Parliament as well. It is unacceptable for a city the size of Gladstone for young mums to not be able to choose to have a baby where, when and how they choose. And there wasn't a dry eye in that park yesterday as Gabriella told her story. And no mum should ever go through that, ever. And we are going to continue to raise these issues until women in central Queensland get the kind of health service that they have relied on for generations. And we do not accept that a government should say that it's all too difficult to provide a city of 60,000 people with the kind of health care that Queenslanders should rightfully take for granted. Over to you, Jarrod.
Thank you, David, and good morning. Jarrod, Bleijie, Deputy Leader of the Opposition. I'll make a few comments today on a few subject matters, the chaos and dysfunction of the Palaszczuk Labor government. The first, let me start with the Queensland Police Service Delivery Program. This was a government program, a government-funded program that the government promised Queenslanders would revolutionise the way Queensland Police deliver their services and fight crime in the state. Mark Ryan has spoken positively about this program. It was Police Minister Mark Ryan's baby. And all of a sudden, we saw 2 days ago, they've abandoned the project completely. Millions of dollars of Queensland taxpayers' money has been wasted on this program. That if Mark Ryan and Anastasia Palaszczuk had have listened to everybody who was warning them about this program, the money would not have been spent and would not have been wasted. The police union are on record from years ago asking them to abandon the program. The opposition had raised this at estimates in Parliament. Our shadow police minister had raised these issues of the service delivery program. Frontline police officers, whistleblowers, kept telling the opposition how bad this program was being rolled out. Morale in the Queensland Police Service is at an all-time low. And just as I predicted yesterday, the Police Minister, Mark Ryan, rather than fronting up to the Queensland Media Gallery and answering these questions, he hid up in Cairns and then he said, as I predicted, oh, it's an operational matter. He continually shies away from his responsibility and just pushes it on to the Queensland Police Service. He is the minister. He is paid nearly $400,000 a year as the Queensland Police Minister to do his job. He's happy, he's more than happy to do press conferences with police puppy dogs and new recruits and graduates because it's the fun things for him, the good, positive press for the Mark Ryan, the Police Minister. But when the moment gets tough, he bails. He bails on the Queensland Police Service and he shifts blame. But that is the character of this chaotic Labor state government. That is the character of blame game shifting that he should take responsibility for. And why should he take responsibility for it? Because he knew about it. This was his program. It was a government program that went through Cabinet, that went through the Cabinet Budget Review Committee, and he would have everyone believe that he knew nothing about it. The trial was in his electorate, the Moreton Bay District for Police. The trial was in his electorate in the Moreton Bay area. So he absolutely knew about this and he should take responsibility for it. And if the Premier wasn't so checked out of what her job is, she would have asked for his resignation. Because time and time again, we have seen Mark Ryan fail the Queensland Police Service. He is a laughing joke. The Queensland Police Service laugh at Mark Ryan. They laugh at their police minister. And at the same time, police numbers have been cut by Mark Ryan. Morale is at an all-time low in the Queensland Police Service. And he's just a joker. He thinks it's all a joke. Well, Mark Ryan and Anastasia Palaszczuk, it's time to get serious. It's time to own up to the mistakes. It's time to admit that the government have wasted millions of dollars on a program that everybody was warning them was not going to work. The Police Commissioner herself, in her annual report in 21-22, said, the reason they're proceeding on this basis is because the old style was unsustainable. Well, now the government have abandoned this service delivery program. They're obviously going back to the old program. What is the government's plan? What is the government's plan to get morale boosted in our Queensland Police Service? So Mark Ryan has a lot of explaining to do, and he should front up to cameras at the Queensland Media Gallery today and answer all those questions. Release the EY report, tell Queenslanders exactly how much this failed program has cost, and why did he not listen to frontline men and women in blue fighting crime in our communities who were telling him all along this program was going to be an abject failure. Mark Ryan, as I said, in the chaos and the lies of police numbers, he lies about police numbers, he lies about not knowing about the program, he lies about this being an operational matter. He's also been caught out lying about sex offenders and the worst of the worst, pedophiles in facilities in Queensland. We saw on 2 occasions Mark Ryan, when pedophiles were illegally taking people into the precinct at Wacol, hiding people in boots and having access to things they shouldn't have had access to. On 2 occasions he got up and said he's fixed it. He's fixed it all, he's done it all. Yesterday he said that he was it was all working fine, the Wacol pedophile precinct, that the coordination and communication between the unions and his department and his office was all hunky-dory. 2 hours later, the Together union came out and said, no, that's not correct. He again lied. He would have everyone believe that it is all hunky-dory in the Queensland Police Service, in the correctional services, but it is not. This is a guy, as Police Minister, that cannot even ensure the secure transportation of bulletproof vests which have been stolen. They are a category weapon, a bulletproof vest. How is this all happening under Mark Ryan's watch? Well, it's because the government are in chaos. They are lurching from crisis to crisis, and the Premier has given up. She has given up on the job. She has given up on listening to Queenslanders. And as I said, they all want to talk about the fun things, the positive photo opportunities, but they're not actually doing the job, and it's impacting the Queensland Police Service, it's impacting correctional services, it's impacting the pedophile Wacol facility, which Queenslanders should be utmost concerned about. So he has a lot of explaining to do. How does he justify his lies when the union have exposed his lies again today? And I'll finish on this. Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk, I've spoken for many years now, has given up. She is more interested in glitz and glamour, the red carpet, building monuments to herself in Brisbane and the Olympics 2032. That's what she's interested in. And I want to pay credit and tribute yesterday to the mothers of Gladstone, who had a picnic in a park and went up there and gathered and talked about the horrendous ordeal that the Palaszczuk Labor government have put them through, with Gladstone maternity services being on bypass for over 300 days. The Leader of the Opposition, David Crisafulli, and our Shadow Health Minister, Ros Bates, spent the time, travelled to Gladstone and spent the time talking to these mums about their experiences, their harrowing experiences. Question is, where was the Premier? Where was Yvette Darth, the Health Minister? Nowhere to be seen. They were invited. The Health Minister, Yvette Darth, who's doing a media conference shortly, has to explain how she couldn't find a little bit of time in her diary yesterday to fly to Gladstone and talk to the mothers that have been impacted by government decisions to put Gladstone maternity services on bypass. In contrast, the Leader of the Opposition and our Shadow Health Minister spent the time on the ground talking to these mothers. And Yvette Darth couldn't spare a minute. Couldn't spare a minute to go to Gladstone and talk to these families. Well, doesn't that tell you everything you need to know about the Palaszczuk Labor government? Any questions on the service delivery program, any of that? No, David?
On the service
Yep.
delivery program, I guess the Queensland Police Union, Unilever, President Unilever said that he credits Commissioner Katarina for at least giving it a go. And it takes, I guess, he says it's good that she had the bravery to try it and then to scrap it when it was clear that it wasn't working. Do you, I guess, accept that there is room there to try something out, to admit that it wasn't working?
No, because the government were warned that this program had not been working for years, even by the police union, who did an open letter exposing the issues. Now, the service delivery statement, the service delivery program was designed to reclassify how police do their jobs, and it was trialled in the Moreton Bay region. It was about making efficiencies. It was about police officers doing more than one particular task, because they said the old system was broken. But when they rolled this out, even in the trial from then Moreton to Logan, it was clear. It was clear that it was not working. 45 police officers in Moreton region today are on extended sick leave. A lot of that is because of the anxiety and the pressure because of this program that the government have now scrapped. The police were warning the police minister and the government about this. They were flying in police officers from around Queensland just to keep pace with what they were trying to roll out. And that's why the opposition and the police union were warning the government years ago that police were stressed. The anxiety was unbearable. The workload was unbearable. Mark Ryan didn't listen. Anastasia Palaszczuk didn't listen. And now all of a sudden, they've abandoned the program. It should have been abandoned when the concerns were first raised, at least halted, so they could sort it out. But they didn't. They kept putting the unnecessary pressure on the Queensland police officers. And Mark Ryan should not be forgiven for that. It's not leadership that Mark Ryan has now decided this program is not proceeding. Leadership would have been abandoning this program years ago when the government initiated it, funded it, went through cabinet, and now Mark Ryan is doing what he always does. And I would implore you, please do not let Mark Ryan get away with this. I implore you. Mark Ryan knew about it. His hands were all over this program, and he is trying to blame senior police like the Commissioner. This is on the Palaszczuk Labor government. This is on Anastasia Palaszczuk and her minister, Mark Ryan. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks. Sally. Yeah. Equally concerning is that there's a culture from the police minister that we only hear about these issues once somebody shines a light on it. We never have proactive, transparent governance when it comes from the minister. It's always someone else's fault. It's either the men and women who wear blue uniforms, it's the Commissioner's responsibility. Never once does he step up and say, okay, this is a mistake and this is how we're going to fix it. And that's not leadership. And there are many holes, there are many fires at the moment that are burning through Queensland Police. And we know that because the frontline officers are telling us that. We know that because there are less people wearing blue uniforms, full-time equivalent frontline officers. There is something deeply wrong with the culture of Queensland Police, and it rests at the feet of one person, and that is the Minister. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. How did we get here in Queensland, where police become battering rams, where stolen cars race through the streets of every part of this state, and the watered-down laws that the state government just won't acknowledge need to be fixed? How did we get here? And that's what Queenslanders are asking. When people put on a blue uniform and go to work, you would expect that they will have the tools, the resources and the laws to be able to do their job. We've now got police officers who are becoming the hunted, who are in a car trying to do their job, and young crims make such a mockery of the laws. Rather than run away from them, they're running straight at them, like battering rams. That's Queensland under the weak leadership we are seeing at the moment, and it needs to change, and we commit to changing it.
I guess there's a conversation at the moment about, again, started by the QPU, about opening up children's court matters involving children to media, going so far as to name, identify those alleged child offenders.
Yeah.
What is, I guess, the opposition's position on that?
Well, my going-in position is that wherever possible, courts should be open to enable you to do your job. And I heard some of the comments from senior government ministers and the Premier seeking to blame the courts. One of the first decisions this government did was remove the ability for reports like this to be, for matters like this to be reported on. So the judiciary enact the laws of the day, and the state government have had 8 years of setting these laws, and one of the first things they did was watered it down. Now, I understand Mr Levers' frustration. His officers are telling me the same thing about how frustrated they feel things have gotten to. I think the fundamental tenet of reporting should be that media should be entitled to be able to have access to courts and to be able to report on it. Now, the identity of a child can be protected, and those matters can still be reported on to ensure that decision makers are held accountable and that lawmakers can have laws that Queenslanders feel confident with.
Okay, so I guess, letting the sun shine in on those children's court matters so that they can be reported on while still the identity
Yeah.
of the child.
Yes.
If the LNP were to take government next year, would you commit to doing that, or making a consistency at least in terms of opening up?
Of course. I just don't understand how on earth Queenslanders benefit from the changes the government made 8 years ago to make it less difficult for the media to be able to report on matters. Find me a Queenslander who would think that that's in their interest. It smacks of a government that just doesn't believe in transparency and accountability, and it was elected on that platform, and that's what's most troubling. To see the slide in cover-ups that have emerged over 8 years, a government that is asking for 14 years in power at the next election, and to see how far they have walked away from the things they said before 2012 is appalling. And no one wins. No one wins when you have a government that is obsessed with trying to keep things under lock and key. And since their election in 2015, we have seen the slide away from transparency. Say that again? Yeah. Well, it's Queensland law that my focus is, and in Queensland, more cars get pinched than anywhere else in the country. And that is not a record that I am comfortable with, and it's not a record that Queenslanders are comfortable with. And if you have a look at every statistic, we are the youth crime capital of the country, and we deserve so much better. And when a state the size of Queensland can contribute to nearly 40% of the youth offenders, there is something drastically wrong with the laws. When a state the size of Queensland can have more stolen cars in the first quarter of the year than anywhere else in the country, something is wrong. And there's only one thing unique to Queensland, and that is a government that has been in power for nearly a decade after watering down laws, and a generation of repeat young criminals who know that their rights are greater than the rights of the victim. And it's got to change. Thanks, guys. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Cheers. See ya.